finally, we got some normalcy coming back to the country. Did you see the press conference, Trump's press conference yesterday? My gosh, he was so good. He was as good as it gets. And he went right through the list of the things he's going to do in his first year of his presidency. He's suing more media outlets. Why wouldn't he? ABC had to give him $15 million for their defamation. Why wouldn't he sue the Des Moines Register and that Ann Seltzer character with her goofy poll? Oh, she's such a great pollster. What was she off by, 17 points? She had Kamala Harris winning Iowa? Kamala Harris didn't win every single county in America shifted to the right. Every one. She was such an awful candidate that the only thing Kamala Harris is going to be good for? Governor of California. You watch and see. She'll wind up being governor of California. They deserve each other. You wait and see. That's her next chapter. This awful, this dreadful, this vapid, empty pantsuit is going to wind up replacing Gavin Newsom. You mark my words, it'll absolutely happen. And nobody's going to be surprised. But Trump talked about suing the media. Do you blame him? Here he was yesterday talking about why there's a need to sue media outlets that lie about him.
I want to expand on the defamation lawsuits. Could you see moving that to other people with individual platforms, social media influencers, people that...
Or newspapers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I think you have to do it because they're very dishonest. We need a great media. We need a fair media. We need, it's very important.
Is he wrong to expect the media to treat him fairly? Is that a big, heavy lift? What's wrong with him saying we need a fair media? And the media itself, the usual suspects, are flipping out. Check out Jake Tapper over on CNN.
I don't want to overstate Trump's friendliness and genial attitude at this press conference because this weekend ABC News agreed to pay $16 million, including legal fees, to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by Trump against the network and their anchor, George Stephanopoulos. And that obviously will not be the end of this campaign against the media, a legal campaign against the media. We heard him go after many other news outlets today. Take a listen.
Well, I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper. We're filing one on 60 Minutes. We're involved in one which has been going on for a while and very successfully against Bob Woodward. We have one, very interestingly, on Pulitzer because reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post got Pulitzer Prizes for their wonderful, accurate, and highly professional reporting on the Russia hoax.
We don't have time to go into all of that, but just to touch base on a couple of these. One of them is the people of Iowa, the Des Moines Register. That's because there was a poll that was inaccurate. Mm-hmm. The one on 60 Minutes is because they didn't like the editing that had been done to the Kamala Harris.
From Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, this is wildly ridiculous.
Wildly ridiculous. You know what Jake Tapper doesn't acknowledge? The reason Trump feels emboldened to go continue these lawsuits is because he won against ABC. He beat that. I mean, they acknowledged you don't pay $15 or $16 million if you didn't do anything wrong. Take it to court. It's real simple. George Stephanopoulos lied like 9 or 10 times. In one interview with Nancy Mace, said that it was adjudicated that Trump raped that kooky E. Jean Carroll lady. And that's not true. In fact, that's literally the 180-degree opposite of what the jury determined. So he lied. That's defamation. If there's a poll that was purposefully manipulated to try to influence the outcome of the election in Iowa, they need to be sued. If 60 Minutes engaged in election interference by painting Kamala Harris in a way that was completely false, they need to be sued. He said that the difference between this term, his second term, and the first term is that now everybody wants to get along with him. And that seems to be true. It seems to be accurate. Listen to Stephanie Rule from MSNBC. Now, MSNBC hates him, right? Check out how Stephanie Rule confirms how accessible President Trump is compared to Biden or Harris.
The day after Donald Trump had that crazy rally at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I rolled the dice, and I called him on the phone. And he answered!
Of course he did! Of course! What'd he say?
And I wasn't calling to chit-chat. I said, Mr. President, this is Stephanie Rule. You made a lot of comments last night, blah, 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 blah. And it was not an on-the-record conversation. Long story, so I'm not going to get into what he said. But I called for one reason. I said, you just said a whole bunch of public things. I'd like to sit down for an interview with you. We got 5 days before the election. So we didn't get into anything. There's nothing for me to report. I called him and said, I want an interview with you. Obviously, he said no. But my point is, I was able to get to him by dialing his phone. Right. Now, that might be completely and you're like, I can't believe people know this guy's phone number. Yeah. But the reverse of that, if I were to want to connect with VP Harris or President Biden, there's 50 people between me and that. I could write a note that maybe could get to somebody, then through Pony Express and a pigeon, something might end up in a mailbox near them. Yeah. And I called DJT to say, yo, can I have an interview?
And he
told
answered.
Me to go myself, but I
now we can relate to that. I've probably interviewed him 15 or 20 times over the phone over the years, and every single time he's called the studio, he calls in himself. He picks up the phone and he calls. I'll never forget, Eric, the first or second time this happened, Eric Hansen was so stunned, he said, Donald Trump is on the phone, and it's him. It wasn't an aide, it wasn't an assistant. This is like the billionaire version of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And they've been so wrong about him all along. And it's almost like they're suddenly coming to their senses. Now, all of a sudden, they get him. Here's Ben Domenech last night on Fox News describing how the media is now seemingly getting it. The Stephanie Rules of the world are saying, it seems, well, maybe we had this guy wrong all along.
While I think is going to be adversarial as it was the first time around, is not going to be perhaps as lunatic as it was at certain junctures, in part because I think the press is just flabbergasted at how much they've gotten wrong over the past several years. You know, this has been a real eye-opener, I think, for a lot of people. The idea that Jeff Bezos, for instance, would crack down on his own editorial page at the Washington Post and say, no, we're not going to deal in this insanity anymore, and even in the direction that would result in backlash from his own writers and opinion makers. I think that's something that we didn't see the first time around, and we're going to see a lot more of it this time around.
He's probably right. Check out the press conference yesterday. Here are some highlights, courtesy of Fox News Channel, of Trump's late morning press conference yesterday from Mar-A-Lago.
The administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. We're bringing business back, and they're all coming back. We lost them over years of stupidity. A golden age of America, I call it. It's begun.
How do you plan to stop the ban on TikTok next month?
We'll take a look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points.
Are you entertaining the idea of preemptive strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities?
Am I going to do preemptive strikes on Iran? Is that a serious question? I don't want to insult you. I just think it's just not something that I would ever answer.
Do you want RFK Jr. to revoke any vaccines?
No, I want him to come back with a report as to what he thinks. I think you're going to find that Bobby is a very rational guy. I found him to be very rational.
So there's a little bit of the highlights of yesterday's press conference at Mar-A-Lago.